Alrighty, a classic Triton pre-unit, the only way they should be. It's a pretty nice little bike. As you heard it coming up the road, she gets through the gears alright and does most of what it's supposed to do for a proper Triton. Even better because it's a bloody big engine, I'll tell you about in a minute. This is a cafe racer, as they used to call them, or still do. The handlebars are below the top clamp and there's rear set pegs on it. In my mind that makes it a cafe racer, although it's a Triton cafe. So typical of the period, except on this one I got a disc brake instead of a drum because the bigger engine has got more poke, and I figured, well, if you ever got silly with it you'd probably want to be able to pull up a bit quicker too. So it's an 18-inch front and rear wheel, commando fork legs because of the 18-inch wheel to give it the right stance. Magura brake lever, the typical fare on the little alloy guards front and rear. The standard slimline tank with an aftermarket or custom oil tank, custom fuel tank, commando rear, commando swing arm and progressive rear shocks. All give it a pretty good stance. They're the MGO aftermarket decibel or knockoff decibel Dunstall mufflers, inch and 3/4 header pipes, and 34mm Mark II carburetors on slightly ported, or not, it's not so much ported, but just blended manifolds. 5-speed in the gearbox and a belt on the other side. This has an alternator and runs a little housing I had made a number of years ago to run the Boyer ignition, or points or electronic ignition, whichever. It's not a bad little thing. Now, this is number 4 in all the strokers that I've built over the last 25-30 years, and this is fairly early in the piece. Some of the ones you've already seen, and there's a few more in the shed and a few I've sold, but I was lucky enough one day at a swap meet to pick up 10 Norton cranks off a bloke. That's 10, and I won't tell you how much money it was, but it wasn't much, and I ripped my pocket getting my hand in to get the dough out. So over the years those 10 have been used up, and I've picked up the odd one here or two. I also had some steel plates made so that when you do a Norton crank you got to get it crack tested, because I have seen a few blown up where people have been using the standard cast iron Norton flywheel crank and ended up with nothing but a mess on the ground at the racetrack. If you're going to race them you should put a steel plate flywheel in it. And if you're going to go an offset crank like you heard, hang on, if you're going to go an offset crank then you really need to you have to put a steel plate in them. Bloody busy today. And then you can twist them to wherever you want, add the weights as needed, and the counterweights that is, and you've got yourself an offset crank. The funny thing about not funny, but the thing about a Norton crank is that the bolt holes line up at 47, and then there's a big space up to 99 once you leave 360. So some of my cranks are 70, I've got a 47, I've got a 99, I've got a 90, and I've got a few 70s and a 76. So you've heard a couple of them. I'll show you a few more later on. I'll lay out some Norton cranks and gear on a table one day and show you a couple of motors that are just sitting in the frame that are half done, that I can show you, the positions of the pistons and all that sort of stuff. And I'll show you some steel racing cranks and some standard modified cranks and some offset cranks. So that way you'll probably believe me. If you think I'm full of shit, well, I'll be able to show you. Anyway, 5-speed gearbox, as I said, it gets along quite well. This is number 4 in the series that I've done. Like I said, I've probably done 20 of them now, all styles. And the first one I did was a pre-unit with a Norton crank and Norton rods. And the knuckles on the Norton rods are just too big. I had to remove too much material. And I had a T140 barrel on it. And the whole thing was a real disaster. It didn't last long. And from then on I've done another one in the shed that I'll bring out probably later this year. It's been in the shed that long. A little BSA my son rides. It's an 828 plus 40, runs plus 40 T140 pistons in a A65 on a Norton crank and Norton rods, and there's plenty of room in an A65 to swing a Norton rod, but not in a Triumph. Standard fare on the type of seat. I think I bought that in the UK when I was there one time. The belt drive in here, I'm running the late model alternator, belt drive, and there's the points housing in there, what was points. The clutch plates I made up myself. I mean, not sorry, the clutch plates, the engine plates I made up myself. And everything else about the bike is, like I say, pretty standard fare. So anyway, I've enjoyed it, although I haven't ridden it much. But when I do, it's fun to get on. And it is that Route Big Barrel. It's got Carrillo rods in there, because when I went to this engine, I had to find a way to match the crank to the barrel, because they're those long rod barrels that were made aftermarket by Sunny Route in 76mm for an 810 on a Norton crank, or just a 750 on a standard Triton crank. And then he made these bigger barrels, which were 800cc. But you put a Norton crank in it, and you pick up about 80mm on the stroke 80cc on the stroke straight away. So this puts this right up around 880. So it's quite a nice little bike. Just slightly vibey, but because it's been dynamically balanced, it's better than what the Atlases were at the time. And it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy it. Anyway, thanks for watching.